All right. Well, it is 5:35, so I will go ahead and introduce us. Thank you everyone for joining us. This is the I-O Professional Panel on Coaching and Development. We have Ellie Hoekman and Aaron Pomerantz who are going to give their introductions, tell you about their journeys, how they got into what they're doing, share some insights, and yeah, we will go ahead and get started. So we'll have Ellie go first, and then after she's done, we'll hand it off to Aaron.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. And just for a quick introduction on me, what I'm going to share with you is a little bit about my journey and how I got here, what I'm doing now, some of the challenges I've faced in being a coach, as well as some maybe a quick tip that you can take home with you to start out. And so to start with my personal journey, it all started with a lottery question. And I don't know if you've ever been asked a lottery question before or recently, but it's just, what would you do with your time if you won the lottery? So we were asked that question as a icebreaker question in a Teams meeting, just like this one at my last company. And the response I gave came to me so quickly, so clearly. And it was just, I would go to high schools and colleges and teach people how to interview, because I had interviewed so many young people in my career as a recruiter, because I was a recruiter. And I saw so many great professionals just talk themselves out of a job. And it made me really, really sad. And I was very fortunate to have a mother who taught me how to interview, because she was a hiring manager. But if I didn't have her, I probably would have done all the same things that these kids did. And I say kids because they were genuinely 15, 16-year-olds that I was interviewing. So the answer for me came very clearly. And it was just, I would go to colleges, I'd go to high schools, I'd teach folks how to interview. And then that question just stuck with me for a really long time, and I couldn't get it out of my head. And then, one night I just randomly woke up at 3 a.m. and was like, how much money do career coaches make? If I really wanted to do this, how much money could I make? So I Google it, I look it up, and they're like, not a lot, not nearly as much as you're making right now as a people analyst, working at a big healthcare organization. And I was like, dang it. Okay, I don't want to go any lower than my current salary. So what can I do? So then the next thing it gave me was, unless you want to start your own business, that way you can make a ton of money in coaching. You have freedom, flexibility. But guess what? You also have a ton of responsibilities. You have a ton of tasks. You've got taxes to figure out. You've got all these things. So it's going to be challenging, but if you're up for the challenge, it could be really rewarding. So that night is when I started my own coaching business, career coaching business. And it was going to be just interview coaching at first, but then it evolved into career coaching, which then evolved into career coaching for I-O psychology professionals. And so that's my main thing in what I do now. So I don't have a PhD. I just have a master's degree in I-O psychology. My coaching certification took me no longer than 2 weeks to complete. So I have a coaching certification. But how valid is it? I don't know. But nobody ever asked me about it. It's one of the questions I get asked a lot. Do I have to become a certified coach in order to start coaching? And I say no, because almost nobody asks about it. They don't care about it. What they actually care about is if you can actually help them solve their problem. That's what they care about. So I have luckily been fortunate enough to solve enough people's problems to convince other people that I can solve their problems. And so that is kind of a little bit of background of how I started my own coaching business. I want to share with you, though, too, some of the challenges that I've really faced with that. In addition to having those responsibilities, one of the hardest parts for me is that I become very attached to my clients' results. And I become very attached to the actions that they take. And so I'm not very good at kind of holding the boundaries and separating my client's success from me. And I think that's just because I'm very, very empathetic, and I care a lot about them and their results. And so I find that sometimes I am almost unhealthily attached to their results, which is something that my other career coaching friends are much better at. And I also think too that it's partially just because I am pretty young. I'm less than 30. And so I haven't had as much of that experience of, other people's actions are their actions alone, and kind of the Let Them theory by Mel Robbins, if you've ever heard of that. I need to eat, sleep, and breathe that book, because it's just not something I'm very good at doing. So that's one big challenge I've faced, and I'm still currently facing to this day. Actually, right before this meeting today, I was putting together kind of expectation setting messages for some of my clients, just saying, hey, look, these are the expectations I have to be an active member in this program. You're not meeting those expectations right now. I would love to be able to support you, but I can only do it if you're able to kind of execute this percentage. And they don't have to be perfect, and they can communicate with me when things go wrong. But setting those expectations even sometimes too can be really challenging. And then I'll finally wrap us up with just like one more kind of quick takeaway that I want everybody to have here. And I think it's that asynchronous video is our future. So things like Loom videos, loom.com, if you've ever heard of it. I'm doing a lot of my coaching now asynchronously. So if my client sends me something, I typically record a Loom going over the feedback for them. They send me Looms of their interview samples and stories. And that way we're just able to communicate a lot more quickly without being synchronous. Now, synchronous, I don't think will ever go away, but I think that if you're not getting comfortable with using asynchronous video communication in your work, that's going to become the norm pretty soon. So if you want to get ahead of it, that's kind of my takeaway for you. So that was a lot of talking. I'm done now. I'll pass it over to Erin so you can introduce yourself.
All right, and it's been how many years since I've been using online conferencing software, and I still always fail to unmute myself before I actually want to. So, hi, my name is Aaron Pomerantz. I'm the Assistant Director for Research and Assistant Director for Research and Evaluation at the Doerr Institute for New Leaders at Rice University, a title I think they gave me because they think it is funny that I can't say it, because it's unwieldily long. I'm actually not an I-O psychologist. I'm a social psychologist. I'm kind of new to the organizational world in a lot of ways, and to kind of talk about like my journey really quickly, and kind of why I'm talking, what brought me into the organizational setting. I went to a grad school very specifically to become a social psychologist. It was a very deliberate choice. It was not kind of like, oh, let me figure out what I want to do. I went to OU for grad school, a fact of which I'm normally proud, but our last performance against Texas on the weekend sort of has me still in mourning. So I'll be proud again once I have some chance to recover from that. Where we focus specifically on measurement and evaluation at OU. Most of us do when we go there, because that's one of the things the program is known for. Is they make you take a minor, and most people minor in quant. You can technically minor in anything, but everyone minors in quant. And my original goal for going to grad school and becoming a psychologist was to be an academic. I wanted to be a professor. I wanted to be specifically a liberal arts college professor, because that matched my experience. I went to a small liberal arts university. That was what got me interested in psychology, period. And that was what I wanted to do. So I got to do that for my first couple of years post grad school. Then came budget cuts and my position went by. And I was sort of left with this kind of big empty chasm of like, okay, well, I got everything I wanted and it didn't work out. And not only did it not work out, but as I was sort of figuring out what was next, I realized I didn't even know if it was what I wanted to keep doing. And so I ended up getting a job with a previous mentor of mine at Rice University. He was looking for a research postdoc. I'd done a lot of research in grad school, and he asked me, okay, well, would you be interested in going back into research? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm interested in right now, so yes, let's do it. And it became really clear to me that I'd been engaging in what something that's called, I would learn, was called identity foreclosure. I was essentially signing over who I was as a person to this image of what I wanted to be. And if I wasn't 100% on board with that, then I didn't see another route for myself. And I'd been really limiting myself to this idea of this basic researcher who did research in a very specific field of social psychology that intersected with cultural psychology and psychology and law. I wouldn't do anything applied. I wouldn't be a consultant, not because I put the thought into it, not because of any moral or ethical or practical or skills-based stance. It's mostly because that was not something I'd ever seen myself doing, and I never considered it. But at the Doerr Institute, we're a leader development organization specifically for students, and that means any student at Rice can come to us to get developmental opportunities. And our number one tool is coaching. We have several programs, and the big flagship program was called Activation. It's a semester of executive coaching. And I'm not going to say I was cynical about coaching or any more cynical than I was about anything. Social psychologists tend to either be, we're very polarized. We're either so optimistic it's annoying, or we're so cynical it's annoying. And I was very much on the cynical side of that spectrum. But then when I look, as part of my job interview, actually, I read a paper that had come out of Doerr, and I had to critique it, which was nerve-wracking, to the authors of it. And as I was looking at it, I was seeing the evidence of what executive coaching could do, and everything from personal well-being to intellectual humility to sense of purpose to being increased in students in a pretty rigorous match-controlled design. And I was like, well, I want some of that, not just in terms of being able to do this research, but I could use some of that personally. And so I got to encounter in coaching, and as I'd seen it I got to see it in the sidelines for a few months, and then I got a really unique chance, especially as a social psychologist. I was kind of taught that we don't do field studies. You don't go there. You will not have a Jane Goodall moment as a social psychologist. You're not going to go and live among, work among, and get an eye-to-eye perspective with the people you study. And there's a lot of reasons in a lot of research topics why that's a really good thing. But we were doing a specific study of a specific program, and we were working in collaboration with the person administrating that program. And they were like, do you want to come? You can just attend, do all the work, even get the certification. Like, we just won't evaluate you. Like, not in terms of pass fail, but in terms of like the personal development stuff. It's like, you can't do that. You cannot become a part of your own sample. But you can come and observe and get a boots on the ground view. And I'm sure that'd be awesome. And to get that view of coaching on the ground was really remarkable. And where I entered it going, I'll maybe learn something, and it's a great way to spend a few weekends. And I ended it going, I wish I'd had coaching in grad school, and I want to keep doing this. And so literally within a few months, I'd actually joined our coaching program that we run at the Doerr Institute for, it's what we do that's not student facing. We run an ICF executive coaching certification program. It's a 6-month program, and I got to be a part of that. I got to get a coaching certification. I am also not sure what it's worth. I'm not sure what it's not worth in terms of me, but it was a real turn for me in that I'd spent most of my career kind of thinking about just doing research for knowledge's sake. And here I am 3 years later, able to not just do basic research, which I still do. I still find it interesting. I'm not going to give it up. But I also get to do things like consult. I get to do things like work with organizations to do internal studies and do impact assessment. I get to put in a lot of ways, I get to put my degree to more practical use than I ever thought I would. Because sure, like, my measures do get published, but they were going to get published. That's what you do as a basic scientist. But not only can I publish measures, I can help clients design their own measures. And I've also been able to bring coaching skills to use in working with grad students, with postdocs, even people in academia and beyond, to kind of take that more developmental step as well. And so I also feel like I've been talking to too long. But to kind of my big wrap up point would be, especially based on my journey and based on my coaching experience, on both sides of it, avoid that identity foreclosure. We sort of have this idea that, as long as I'm not becoming who my parents wanted me to be, I'm doing all right. I did a very good job of that. I was never encouraged to be a social psychologist. But I'd say we need to be equally aware of the way we're foreclosing our own identities. You're going to have all these people have all these expectations about what they should do. What is the right way to move? What is the right thing for me to be doing? And you just kind of lock into this version of your future self that is, that could be exactly who you need to become, and it could be 180 degrees from who you need to become. And so rather than just focus on that vision and hold it unquestioned, take the time to question why you hold the vision of your future self that you do, why you want to become that person, and what you're going to do if you don't do it. And I think that doing that really opens some doors, not just for money, not just for professional development, but for personal growth and satisfaction, that you'll be really surprised when they open. So yeah, I'll turn it over. I'm assuming Brianna, I turn it over to you technically.
First of all, thank you both so much for sharing that. And for being so earnest with, questioning your journey, because I think that's something that comes up a lot in these panels of people going through like these really big transitions, or like maybe they're, older than college age and they're like, I don't know, like I kind of like the sound of I-O, but I don't really know how to pivot and get there without having to go through like a whole nother program. And hearing these things of like, you don't have to completely change or redo your education. You can pivot and go get certifications or mentorship or whatever. And so I think it's very, very helpful. Go ahead, Kale.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah. So we're going to start the Q&A here. If anyone wants to use like the raise hand feature in Teams, you can speak, or if you're more comfortable, you can type them into the chats, and I'll read them out so that if folks want to watch the recording, they'll still be able to hear the questions. So I'm going to give it about 10 seconds here, awkward silence. If no one has a question, I have some prepared as well. So you can just wait for a little bit. Seth, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So thank you both. It's really cool to hear about your journeys so far. Here's a question that students often ask. Can you start out in coaching early career, or does it make more sense to have some sort of experience to draw on? In other words, is this something that they could be doing now or preparing to do when they graduate? Or is it kind of like, nah, hold off a bit until you have something more to draw on?
Yeah, I'd love to answer this because, as I mentioned before, I am pretty young. And when I started my business, I was 26. So I said I'm less than 30. So if you're doing the math, and I've been in business for 3 years, so I'm 29 now, but I was 26 when I started, and that felt very young. And when I go to career coaching meetups with other career coaches, I'm typically one of the youngest people there. So this is something I really battled with for a long time. Like, do I have enough experience to speak to? And what I've come to find is that actually, in my experience, the best coaches are people who are coaching other people who are about 2 to 5 years before them, because that experience is actually really fresh. So the experience of graduating with my master's degree, not knowing what I want to do with my I-O career, not being 100% sure what options I even had, all of those feelings were still pretty fresh for me, because I'd only felt them about 2 years before I started coaching I-O specifically. And because those feelings were fresh, I was able to better empathize and create better resources for those people. So what I would say to a student who is thinking about getting into coaching and feels like they need to have 50 years of experience, what I would say to them is go find somebody who's maybe 2 to 3 years younger than you, whether that be in age or in experience level, and just start coaching them, figuring out what are the questions they're asking, what are the problems they need solving that you just solved anywhere from 2 to 5 years ago. So no, you do not have to have a million years of experience underneath your belt. It helps sometimes, but usually once people are really experienced, then they still are only coaching people who are anywhere from 2 to 5 years below them. So like a VP coaching a middle manager into how to be a VP, an executive coaching a VP how to become an executive. It's usually just a person who's just one step down. So that's what I would say to those students is find somebody who's 2 to 5 years behind where you are and start coaching them and solving their problems.
Yeah, I'd echo some of that. I'd also say that it really depends on what you mean by coaching as well. Like there are different models. So if you're especially you're doing career coaching, yeah, that's going to require at least some experience. You can't probably not the best idea to coach somebody older than you if you're trying to career coach them. But there are other coaching models as well. So it depends on what when you say you want to coach, what do you want to do? So if you're doing something like executive coaching or really any non-directive coaching form, your focus is more on holding space for a person and being that voice who asks why in a non-judgmental setting. but who still asks the why and asks the hard questions. You can do that with somebody who's older than you.
Mhm.
The question is can you be the sort of person who truly does that, especially in a non-directive way? Like we've looked at developing students into coaches at Rice. You can do it, but it is sort of worth recognizing that being a good coach isn't necessarily a matter of learning, it's a matter of development, because you can know all you can have the cognitive ability or the cognitive knowledge, as if there's another kind of, anyway, you can know that you're not supposed to direct people. You can know that, oh no, I should just hold space for people and talk and not tell them what to do. But can you actually do that? Can you actually create those spaces? Is that the sort of person you are? And if you are, then yeah, I think it's really important, and it's a valuable skill that even if you don't become a full-time coach, you're going to take it with you and apply it in ways you could never imagine. There's literally no downside to gaining coaching skills, I don't think.
I also want to add another part too that I just remembered. I also agree with you what you said, Aaron, too. And I've even coached people. I've had several clients who were older than me, but that's why it's not always about age. Sometimes they were older than me in age, but they were younger than me in their I-O journey. So it ended up working out. There's a coach. Her name is Lana Ivory. If you ever look her up, she is like she's Gen Z, and she coaches like boomer Gen Y. I don't even remember. Like she coaches
Gen X.
Yeah, Gen X and boomer generations on how to manage and best support their Gen Z employees. So she's literally, I think she's like 24 or something, and she's coaching these like high level executives on how to provide good employee experiences to their Gen Z employees, which is like so cool. Like I probably could never do it because I'd be like sweating and shaking and not knowing what to say. But I think the reality is like with coaching, you can take it so many different ways as long as you're, if you're doing that real work of coaching, like Aaron said, which is, asking those questions, asking the why. I was talking with another coach last week who she said to me that her son, who's like, I don't know, 7, when he was 7, somebody asked him, what does your mommy do for work? And he goes, she just asks questions all day. Because she was just asking people questions all day in phone calls and in person. And that was her role. So I would say that don't let the age or the experience level stop you from trying to engage in what being a coach truly is, which is what Aaron said. So I appreciate your input there, Aaron. Very smart.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. These are really insightful answers. I actually have a bit of a follow-up question that I'm sure both of you have run into. That's probably really applicable to you, Ellie. But do you have any advice for the young person getting into coaching in terms of like building credibility with, if you had an older level like coach or someone who was like C-suite or something? How do you build that credibility? Because obviously you're going to need their buy-in if you want the coaching to be successful.
Okay. So when I think of building credibility, I think of kind of the way that I have managed my LinkedIn profile, for example, or my marketing. And now I don't do this anymore, but I used to post consistently on LinkedIn almost every single day. And I would post about the problems that my clients were facing. Or when I didn't have clients, before I had any clients, I would post about the problems my ideal clients would be facing. And so that was a way for me to showcase that I had solutions to these micro problems. So a micro problem could be like nervousness in an interview, or, how many pages your resume should be. These are kind of like these micro problems. And then the macro problem of that is getting a job in I-O. So if I'm able to solve these micro problems, I probably then know a lot about the macro problem of getting a job in I-O. And so that's where people may come to me to say, hey, I saw your post on XYZ. I saw you help with this. Can I set up a chat with you? Can we work together? But at the same time, what I've also found too from working with other career coaches and just having my own business is that a lot of times what you have done in your experience doesn't really matter to that person who's potentially considering paying you for coaching. What they really ultimately care about is if you can solve their problem. So I mentioned that nobody asked me about my career coaching certification because nobody cares. What they care about is that I have a process that I can put them through that's going to help them get a better job faster. And that's where I would say that credibility doesn't matter as much, because it's not about what I've been through. But at the same time, there's certainly been clients that I guess prospects that I've had before who have not wanted to work with me because I hadn't been on I-O for 10 years, or, you know, I was actually technically only in an I-O role, of like particular I-O role, for about 3. And they were just like, I just don't like, that's just not enough experience for me. And that's fine. So to those people, it does matter, but it does not matter to everyone. I don't know if I fully answered the question there, but that's kind of what comes to mind when you speak of credibility.
No,
Problem solving those micro problems. That's really what it comes down to.
All right, looks like we've got a couple questions in the chat here. Alexis asks, if you want to start a career in coaching, should you begin broadly with different populations, life coaching, career coaching, executive coaching, and then focus on a specialty? Or should you only gain credibility by specializing in one from the start?
I have an answer to this, but I want to let Aaron speak too.
I mean, Ellie, I think Ellie has more specific expertise and experience. My view is more that of the observer for this, but I would say that I think that trying to specialize from the start too much is going to potentially pigeonhole you, maybe even engage in identity foreclosure. At the same, which I'm realizing I'm like, I should have probably checked if this is even a valid use of the term identity foreclosure. So if somebody is watching this on YouTube and I'm misusing it, forgive me. But you know, you could pigeonhole yourself really big. I am an XYZ coach, and if I'm not getting XYZ clients, I have no way forward. So that could be a risk. But at the same time, I do think both as a matter of credibility and just your own capability, you do want to know who you want to work with, and I think that's also a matter of motivation. Like it's important to have a why. Like I really like working with thanks for endorsing my use of the term. I appreciate it. I'm going to feel much more sanguine now. I'm going to keep going identity foreclosure. But yeah, I would say that most of the people I coach are grad students or grad student adjacent. Like I work with med students. I've had some early career professors and other graduate students, and yeah, there's overlap in expertise and experience there too. But there's also, for me, like that's who I like working with. I have coached people outside of that who I have a good we click and there's personal connection there. But if it's like if it's somebody who's say an oil exec or something, I'm not just going to have struggle to connect with them personally and experientially. I'm going to have a problem relating to them, not in terms of, you know, this is somebody I could still go get a beer with, I'm sure, but the passion is going to be harder to start up. And I have the luxury of kind of picking my clients a lot more. If you're going to do this full time, you want your clients to be a population you have a passion for and that ability to connect with, I would say. But again, I'm going to turn it over to Ellie because I think she has a lot more experience to rely on.
Yeah, I mean, everything you're saying is super accurate though too. So the way that I see it is, the way you've positioned this question is, I want to start a career in this. And to me, if you want to start a career in it, that means you want to make money off of it, right? Because you got bills to pay, girl. I get it. So there's money to be made there. So when I think of making money from a coaching business, I do think of niching and specializing as a great way to do it. Not the only way. I would never say that. I would never say it's the only way, because there's people who have not specialized and done great. But it is a much easier and faster way to get to a consistency in terms of income. The reason I say that is because it's kind of like if you needed heart surgery, you probably wouldn't go to your general practitioner. You would probably go to a cardiologist who has done that surgery 1,000 times. And you would expect to pay more because you're paying for certainty. Another example I have is I hired a personal trainer because I play ultimate Frisbee. I'm an ultimate Frisbee athlete. And I was considering 3 personal trainers. One of them would charge $50 an hour. The other one was $55 an hour. The one I went with was double. He's more than double. He's $125 an hour. But I went with him because he specializes in training ultimate Frisbee athletes. And I'm paying because I want to get better at ultimate Frisbee, not just stronger, not just faster like the other 2, but all my ultimate Frisbee skills will increase. And so I'm paying for that level of certainty. So it's kind of the same thing when you specialize in something, But if you are just getting started and you're thinking about making a career out of it, you're not even sure if you want to make money from it yet, I say start a little bit more general and then figure out what you're grooving and what you're liking, rather than, like you say, like Aaron said, picking something, being pigeonholed and being stuck with what you picked. Start to experiment. And that's actually how I started too. I was coaching some people from my cohort from college and helping them get jobs in I-O. When I look back at all the people that I'd helped, I realized that those ones were the most fulfilling because I am super passionate about I-O in general in the I-O career. So it made sense for me to specialize in I-O. And I've had a couple of people ask me too, like, is your niche too narrow? Do you struggle to find people? Absolutely no, I don't. If anything, I have the opposite problem where people feel like I'm the only person that can help them. I've even had people say to me before, if I'm going to get a career coach, it's going to be you because you specialize in I-O. I've had multiple people say that to me before. So specializing is a great idea, especially if you're looking to make money. If you're still looking to explore the career and explore your interest in it, then I say stay broad.
Great, thank you for that. Definitely deeper problem than I had assumed at front. So Lee says, just to throw it into the conversation, you can be a coach without being a consultant. He says, I've been coaching my employees and my team for over 25 years as part of team building, employee development, and performance management. Do you guys think that there's any major differences between as an external consultant versus as like the leader of a team or like an internal kind of position in terms of coaching?
I mean, I'll be honest and say that I've the most use I get out of my coaching cert isn't in having coaching clients. It is in my other consulting gig as an impact assessment, and even my main job, which has elements of instruction and impact assessment to it. The skills, you're going to coach people all the time if you have this ability to hold space for people and be in a safe place for them and ask them the hard questions in a safe way. That's where I think like some of the deeper coaching conversations I've had have been provoked by something that started as a why do you not want to measure this, or why are you hey, that was a strong reaction, can we talk about it, something like that. And when you talk about impact assessment, you explain it to people, it's like, oh, like you do scientific measurement of development and stuff, why does that intersect with coaching? And I'm like, because it's vulnerable. And also I can give you all the impact assessment stuff, but I can also just tell you that you're going to ask this question for whatever you do if you enter coaching. It's like, how does that intersect with coaching? Well, because you've become the sort of person who practices coaching skills and embodies a coaching mentality across a variety of spheres. And that could be something you do as a formal coaching consultant. It could be something you apply to other coaching consultancy opportunities or other consulting opportunities that don't directly intersect with coaching. But it's also something I think you'll use throughout your life. And I will say, just so I don't sound too pie in the sky, and maybe to indulge my inner pure social as opposed to social organizational psychologist, it can get annoying. Don't coach the close others in your life. They will get mad at you. Do not coach your spouse or your children.
So true.
It's not good.
So true.
It's not a good idea. My wife is also a coach in a very different way, and we have both had the conversation with each other, like, don't coach me. I don't want to. Do you want to? We will literally ask each other, do you want to coach or do you want to be coached? Because sometimes you want to actually be coached, and sometimes the answer is not. And what are you going to do about that? It's like, oh, that sucks. I'm sorry. Like, so it becomes such a ubiquitous part of your life if you do it that you have to remember sometimes to turn it off. So you will use it wherever you are.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say too, is like you become a coach and then it just kind of becomes a part of who you are and the way that you operate. It's the same like with sales. So in addition to this, I also do sales. And because I am reading books about sales, I'm getting better at persuading people to do things in life in general. Just not even intentionally. It's just the skill set that I'm building as a salesperson. It's the skill set that I built as a coach. I just become a person who asks better questions and helps people come to their own solutions like I do with my clients. So yeah, absolutely, totally bleeds in. And so what I would say to that too is like, if you start getting better about coaching, you start learning more about coaching, you read books about coaching, and you manage people in your role, for example, you're going to find yourself probably coaching them, whether you know it or not. And my mom is a perfect example. She's somebody who's a senior director who has a couple of reports under her, 5 or 6 reports. And she is coaching all of those people all the time. So even though that's not necessarily a part of her role, she's still coaching them all the time because she wants them to develop and succeed. And she's had a very, very, very small turnover rate. Once somebody's on her team, the only time they leave is if they're getting promoted to another department. So yeah, coaching can be completely integrated into other things other than just like being a coach or being a consultant.
Great answers, great answers. Looks like Jason has a question that is kind of similar to the impact analysis you were talking about, Aaron. Says, thank you both for your fantastic insight. This has been an incredibly informative and exciting. He says he has a burning question for both of you. How is success measured with clients beyond just landing a job? Are there other important factors you consider? For Ellie specifically, how do you balance scalability with maintaining the personalized coaching that you emphasize? And what other pieces of your I-O career do people tend to find most impactful?
Yeah. Okay. These are great questions, Jason. I appreciate them. So I will share with you how success is better beyond landing a job. So obviously landing a job is our micro problem, right? So that is the number one reason we were working together. And then inside of that, we've got all these micro problems. What types of jobs are you going to apply for? What types of people are you going to network with? When do you get an interview invitation? When do those people respond to those networking messages? When do you start getting more confident in how you answer tell me about yourself? When do you start getting more confident in your ability to answer any interview question? These are all of these kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not benchmarks. Someone help me. It's like activation points, all these activation points that we have and achieve. And so there's lots of micro problems inside of the macro problem. But what I will say, and this kind of starts to answer the last question of the piece that they find the most helpful of working with me, is that they gain confidence in their ability to overcome problems because they have overcome so many micro problems through working together. That is, it has solved their macro problem. And now when they have micro problems in the future, such as what's my next 30, 60, 90-day plan going to look like? How am I going to get on important projects with my new role? How am I going to get myself on track for a promotion? They know and feel agency in their ability to solve problems. And, you know, some of the things that I teach, they can implement over and over and over and over again. Things like, you know, changing your mindset to more positive and truthful language, even in your own mind, like teaching that, you know, that's something that they can just implement throughout the rest of their career. And then in terms of balancing scalability with personalized coaching, I personally have never been interested in scaling. I have never been interested in having an empire. I've never been interested in having my own team of people, at least not right now. That was never my goal. My goal was to make decent money, pay my rent, do work I love to do, have half days on Fridays so I can continue volunteering at the community college. That was always my goal. And so for me, scaling was never very important for me. But what I do know from the coaches that I've worked with who have scaled, it's because they've done so with a team. So they have hired somebody who can help them take on maybe the more monotonous tasks, or they'll hire somebody who is, let's say, a networking coach or an interview coach, or people who take on certain parts of the process so that that person can still get individualized support with that one person. It's not maybe it's not the main coach every single time, but you can kind of delegate out certain tasks and certain support within the model. That's what most people who are building and scaling, that's typically what they tend to do, is they tend to hire a team to make that happen. But again, that was never my goal. So it was never something I really did. I hired like a virtual assistant for a short amount of time to help me with marketing, but then but then I was just back to doing it on my own. And right now I love that. So hopefully that answers all those questions.
Yeah, I have my much shorter answer is that I don't tend to, because of the type of coaching I do, landing the job is not really something, a metric of success for people I coach. Again, because half the time I'm coaching, it's in a different context where we're not in a formal coaching agreement. For me, especially with the model of coaching I was trained in, my clients sort of determine success. In fact, I even ask them, maybe not in these words, but at the beginning of every session, what does a successful coaching engagement look like? And what does a successful session look like? And sometimes that changes along the course of the engagement, especially for people in a really transitional period, like a resident, medical resident, or a grad student. But for me, I mean, sometimes I'll formally measure it. Like I have my favorite measurements I like to give people, and I'm like, we can set improvement in this area if you want. Though obviously some of these aren't designed for standard pre-post analysis at an individual level, but we can focus on that. But for me, it's more about, can I help my clients reach the goals they want to reach, whether that's a formal coaching client or just in the context of a different engagement or a different situation. Can we reach that shared that shared destination, metaphorically, that we want to reach?
To expand on that, Aaron, like if someone has a very lofty idea that they want to improve that, like they say something like, oh, I want to become a better like communicator, how would you go about quantifying that and actually, measuring it in some capacity in terms of improvement? It doesn't have to be communication, but something very general like that.
Oh, it's a very difficult question, because I have two answers to that. If it's I want to be a better communicator, and it starts with the same question, what does that mean? But then, if I'm coaching them, it's more about what does that mean to you? And then if it's measurement, it's like, well, what does that mean? Is that really what you mean? You need to go down the realm of actually trying to make it into a measurement. But in terms of coaching, it's not necessarily always quantifiable. And I do believe coaching should obviously be evidence-based. I'm not going to argue for, whatever it means to you today. But if it's in the context of coaching a client, they want to become a better communicator, I'm like, okay, what does that look like? And why does it look like that? And how are you going to know you've attained it? And what's something you can do to work on it? And what does better mean? All these questions, and then based on the response to any one of them, we continue that conversation. But I think a lot of people want to become better at something, but they don't necessarily know what better means beyond just not, above my current status. It's like, cool, but humans don't all grow towards the same endpoint. Equifinality is a great word, and I use it often, meaning many paths lead to the same direction, and many paths can lead to the same outcome. But at the individual level, better is almost meaningless unless you take that next step to say what it means to you and how it looks to you. Which is I understand it's going to be a very frustrating answer in some ways, and it would be just as frustrating to a client. And that's where I have to sit there and be the sort of person who's like, we're uncomfortable. Answer the question. So
I'm sure that's very common. Okay, looks like we have a couple more questions in the chat. Bri asks, Aaron, will you elaborate/contrast your work with executives versus students teaching coaching at the Doerr Institute? Pros and cons of both, and are there differences in egos, imposter syndrome, stubbornness? How do you see your social psych foundation impacting your analysis and approach to these?
Yeah, so I will clarify. I don't coach our Doerr students, at least not as a part of our formal coaching programs. We have research interns sometimes, and so there'll be coaching conversations as a part of that. I honestly don't find the oldest person I've ever coached was a C-suite adjacent person. They worked as a fractional person, fractional stuff. And the youngest person I've ever coached was 19, and I don't think there's that much of a difference, to be honest with you, in terms of the process. Differences in ego, not really. I mean, sometimes people are going to be provoked differently, but everyone has an ego and everyone can be provoked. So yeah, there are going to be things that a grown-up, quote unquote, is going to be more easily provoked about than a college student. But the inverse is also going to be true. There's going to be questions of imposter syndrome. I would say that as a general truism, and something I've heard in feedback from our coaches at the Doerr Institute, is the questions and the problems of college students do tend to be a little broader. So it's a little bit more like, who do I want to be? And answering that question is still going to have that's a big question with a big answer. People who are farther along in their careers tend to be asking more specific questions, and they have to reach a more specific answer themselves. So that is one difference. But But other than that, I wouldn't say there's a big difference. In terms of my social psych foundation, I found myself the last few years inhabiting this really weird liminal space between social and organizational, because I think there is one formal social work department in the country, it's Columbia. And I do still do social work, social psychology work. I do find it interesting. Doing basic research is still something I do find fun. I haven't given it up. And so there is a side of me that, being closer to that more classic basic research, I don't tend to get bogged down in the details. But I would say that something that I have found really, really challenging to grow from, having entered an organizational space and working in more organizational spaces, is asking that question, well, why does this matter? And that's a really big approach to analysis and approach to practice across the sphere. Why does what you're doing matter? As a social psychologist, pure social basic research, you get to just ask interesting questions and find out what you want to do. And you probably aren't going to be a consultant, period. And coaching is probably not something most social psychologists know exists in a lot of ways. Taking it in a more applied direction, asking, what does this matter? Why does this matter? What are you going to do from this? How are you going to help people with this? How does this connect to your values beyond just being super duper smart and increasing knowledge? And patting yourself on the back has been a really useful question to ask myself and to grow through, because sometimes the answer is, oh, it doesn't. And that can be a very humbling thing to admit to yourself and really help you set priorities differently. And it's something I've really appreciated spending time with the I-O crowd, is that the ability to make a concrete difference in people's lives and their businesses and their work is something that's really, I think, easily denigrated, especially because, if you're going to be into consulting as an I-O psychologist, as a coach, what have you, there are financial incentives to doing so. It's not all good pro-social starving artist style psychology. And so it's really easy for those who are outside of that to go, they're just in it for the money. I'm like, no, it's because you get to make an impact in people's lives that I think is really fulfilling and surprising. And you get to grow yourself in a way that is just very different than the basic research model I was taught and that I encountered in grad school. So I definitely see strengths from my social background. I don't view myself as having rejected it in any way, shape, or form, but I think that expanding to kind of spend time with the cousins and in the I-O sphere is something more of us should do and really learn and benefit and enter into dialogue about. So, yeah.
Ellie, did you have any insight onto, I guess, the different problems, different types of coaching clients face? I'm sure you see a lot of students or, recently graduates.
Yeah, I agree with what Aaron said about typically the newer they are, the more broad, and then the more experienced they are, the more specific their questions typically become. I completely agree with that. There was something else I was thinking of, but now I just forgot it. It was kind of the difference between like fixed and growth mindset. So sometimes when people come to me and we're having an initial consultation, I come to realize through the way that they're answering my questions that they have a very fixed mindset and aren't necessarily leaning towards growth, and do not really see a path for change. And so, sometimes I recognize that with those clients, it's going to be harder, because I also, in addition to coaching them through their job search, I'm going to also have to be coaching them to a more growth-oriented mindset and action taking. Because if they don't have that, then they just will not be successful in my program at all. You have to be growth mindset focused in order to be successful within my program, or within coaching with each other. So I'd say that that's like one of the biggest differences I see, and it happens across genders, across social status, it happens everywhere. There's fixed and growth mindsets in multiple people. And even we ourselves can be both fixed and growth. And oftentimes we just lean more towards one side. I like to say I'm about 70% in the growth mindset, and I'm always working. I'd love to be upwards of 99% in growth mindset, but I've still got things I've got to work through, right? So, we're always a work in progress, but when I'm working with somebody, they've at least got to be open to adopting more of a growth mindset. So that's a kind of a difference I see in how effective coaching can be. If they are fully fixed, not open to growth at all, then the coaching is only actually going to frustrate them, because it's just going to be like somebody telling you the sky is green, the sky is green, the sky is green. That's not inspiring when you don't agree with it. So that's what I will say to that. But I also really want to answer the other question we have here too. I'm on pins and needles waiting to answer it, because I have a fun story for it.
Sure.
If we can move forward, unless you have anything else you wanted to add. No, all good. Okay.
Now let me read it.
Yeah.
Petra asked, the best managers in today's workforce seem to be those who are able to incorporate coaching into their leadership. How do you suggest successfully integrating that, especially considering the other responsibilities one might have as a manager?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like this question a lot. And the funny story, anecdote I want to share is, and I really wish I knew where this came from, but it's basically like, you want to do this exercise. It's like, if I was going to pay you $1,000 a week to do something, you'd figure out a way to do it. Same thing with coaching your staff. Same thing with motivating your the people that you manage, right? If it was of value to you, like let's say $1,000 of value, to do that action consistently, you'd find a way to make it work. Whether that was incorporating into your calendar, your daily task list, your Trello, if that's how you organize all of your stuff, you would figure out a way to make it happen. You set a reminder on your phone. And so when it comes to finding the time or finding the priority to make it happen, you just do that exercise. How would I implement this if I knew that I was getting paid $1,000 a week to do it every week? And then you do that. And what's funny is like you might not directly get paid $1,000 a week for it, but I bet over time, the way that the people that you manage grow, like that will pay its dividends if you're coaching them consistently. So I like that little exercise, and I've given that to a couple folks before. Like if they're having a hard time finding time to apply for jobs, I say, okay, if I paid you $1,000 a week to apply to 10 jobs per week, you'd figure out a way to make it work, right? Yeah, I guess I would. So, obviously, unfortunately, I can't do that. I would if I could, but that exercise could sometimes get you to think a little bit more creatively about how you're prioritizing your time.
Yeah, I would echo that, and I'd also say that keeping in mind that coaching it's a mindset, not just skills.
Mm-hmm.
But both the mindset and the skills are only going to be beneficial to you. So like, yes, you have KPIs you have to hit as a manager, and you have other responsibilities. But things like emotional intelligence, the ability to listen, to question, to cultivate safety, to have a growth mindset, and get curious as opposed to directive, that's only going to help you. It's not like you have to be like, okay, out the Venn diagram that is my time, this is where I'm putting coaching. It's like, it's gonna go everywhere. It's a developmental question. It's not a training question. It's not like, I must dedicate this time to learning coaching. No, just practice it across your managerial roles, and I think you'll see the results.
Yeah, my boss is actively coaching me through something right now. One of my bosses that I sell for, he's actively coaching me through something right now. And we were having a meeting today, and he said, okay, I'm putting it on my calendar right now. This is 30 minutes every single week where I'm going to check on your KPIs. And we've also set up where I'm going to send him an end of day report every day, how many calls I had, how many people closed. So we're just implementing these recurring systems to ensure that we're staying on top of what we want to stay on top of. So, yeah.
One last question here. Brandon asked to Ellie, you're a huge proponent of networking, and as you can imagine, this is a common topic in many of our panel sessions. Will you give a piece of advice to grad students and early career I-Os in terms of networking? I guess with the end goal being to get a job.
Yeah, absolutely. So my number one piece of advice is be interested, not interesting. A lot of people when they're networking, they're focusing on being an interesting person and sharing their background and their story. Don't worry about being interesting. Be interested in them. And so what I say is to that, if you want to take that into, okay, what actions do I take now that I'm going to try to be interested? What are the questions I want to know about people? Do I want to know their story? Do I want to know how they started? Do I want to know how much money they make? Do I want to know what their day-to-day looks like? What are the things that I care about, and how can I ask them those questions? And so even if it's just like a note card that's in your pocket of the questions that you like to know about people, start making that the way that you network. Start making that the way you interact with anyone at all. If you go to a new event and you go to like a little mixer, they've got pizza in the room, instead of going in there and trying to be interesting, just go and be interested in other people, and it will be amazing how much you will see people just open up to you, start talking to you. They feel like they're best friends because you're interested in them. So that's my number one piece of advice. Be interested, not interesting.
Thank you so much. That was such a great answer. I will go ahead and close this out. I don't see any other questions. And I felt a little stingy asking questions in my own panel, but I really wanted them answered.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you both so much. I just wanted to say that I think that this was such a unique and insightful session. Ellie and Aaron are both people that I admire very much. Aaron was one of my psychology professors in undergrad and has done lots and lots of work on my research projects. We have worked together on that, and I am very appreciative of all of his guidance with that. And then Ellie, I actually met earlier this year. I had like a consult with her, and she really inspired me to start networking within I-O more than I already had been. And it pretty much is what sparked this whole network group. Like this idea came from my conversation with her. So yeah, I was very excited about this panel because I am very grateful for both of these people. So
yeah, well, good for you for taking the advice, because I give that advice to a lot of people. And you're one of the like 20% who's taken it. So good on you, Bree.
Thank you. Well, thank you all so much, and feel free to connect with all of us on LinkedIn. And then if y'all have any questions about future panels or anything like that, just feel free to send me a message.
Thanks so much. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.